All right, welcome back, folks. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. Today, we're going to be doing a way too early Rams 53-man roster projection. Before we dive into that, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Also, be sure to follow me on all social media at JK Bogan. Let's get into it. So, kicking things off, we're going to start off with the quarterback position. Obviously, that's where we normally start off. And I have the Rams, of course, keeping two quarterbacks. The reason being, I understand they could keep three. However, let's be real here. They're not going to keep Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster if they don't have to keep him on the roster and they can put him on the suspended list. Because they can put him on the suspended list and he'll miss the first two games, as we all know, he doesn't count as a roster spot. So therefore, I think Stetson Bennett will be the quarterback the Rams end up keeping. Obviously, it's between him and Dresser Wynn, and I think Stetson Bennett will win that pretty easily. Then Matthew Stafford, of course, will be your starter. So kicking things off, that's where we have it there. Going over to the running backs here, I have the Rams keeping four running backs on the roster. It's not an easy decision whatsoever because there are five worthy guys. But here's the deal. First off, the pickup of Boston Scott changed really everything. I think everybody made it beforehand, even after they drafted Blake Corum out of Michigan the third round. But I think Boston Scott kind of changed everything because he has that kick return flexibility here, potentially even punt return flexibility that I think could really propel him onto this roster. So with that said, I have them, of course, keeping their starting running back and one of the best running backs in all of football, Kyren Williams, to no surprise there. Of course, the third round, 83rd overall pick, Blake Corum will make the roster here. And I also have Boston Scott making the roster, but that fourth spot is very interesting. And if you guys have watched any of my videos before and you saw the video that I made about roster battles, I think it really comes down to Zach Evans and Ronnie Rivers. Now, I'm going to go with the former here in Zach Evans. I think the reason is because he offers a little bit more than I think Ronnie Rivers does as far as diversifying the running back room. Obviously, you have a speed threat now in Boston Scott, and Blake Corum ran in the 4.5s. And to be honest with you, Kyren Williams isn't slow. He's just not blazing fast. But Zach Evans has that second gear that can, allow him to hit that home run if need be, that Ronnie Rivers does not have. I think Rivers is very similar to two of the guys already on this roster in Corum and Kyren. And so for that reason, I think Rivers, while he could be back on the practice squad, I'm going to have him missing the cut here. And I'm going to take Zach Evans, the 6th round pick they traded up to get last year. Keeping him on the roster for his second season. I think it's too early to cut a guy like that because you did invest some capital. I'm not saying he has to end up being your starting running back in the future. And I do realize the gravity of the situation going out and getting Blake Corum probably hurt any chance of him ever becoming a starter. But with that said, I think he still has value. And while Ronnie Rivers is better in pass pro, he's not much better in pass protection. And I think that's what will be the ultimate deciding factor for Zach Evans. Moving on to wide receiver, this one was tough for me. I kept going back and forth here. I'm going to go with 6. Okay, I could see 7. I'm going to go with the roster 6 here. We're going to start with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Those are your two starters. After that, you have Demarcus Robinson, who signed a 1-year deal. You have Tutu Atwell, who could very well end up emerging as the third wide receiver. Feels like right now Demarcus Robinson would be the third, but it was really intriguing how the Rams didn't go after a wide receiver until the 6th round. It does speak to maybe there's some value there with Tutu Atwell to be brought back after his contract year. We'll see what ends up happening. But those are the 4 I have. Then number 5, I have Jordan Whittington, the 6th round pick I previously mentioned out of Texas. I think this is a no-brainer here. Whittington was not drafted to be a camp body like some people in the comment section have said. He is going to have a role, whether it's on special teams, as a returner, as a gunner. He eventually is going to work his way into the receiving rotation. I do believe that. And I think right now having him as the 5th wide receiver is definitely a good sign. I feel like this is somebody who could emerge and have a very, very good year if anybody does go down with any sort of injury. What you always hope for is that you don't see a Puka Nacua type of season. And the reason I say that is because while Puka Nacua was invaluable last year for the Rams, it meant that Cooper Kupp essentially had to go down with an injury for that to even occur. So you hope that everyone stays healthy, but in the event that that does not happen, I think Jordan Whittington can be that guy to take over and end up being a potential starter as early as this year if he's thrown into the fire and has to be thrown in the fire early on. My 6th wide receiver, this comes down to the fact they did, trade away Ben Skoranek. It's worth mentioning. But also, you have to keep in mind here, they did sign Tyler Johnson to a contract 1-year contract extension, 1-year contract. They have him. They have Drake Stoops. So they have Xavier Smith. There's some guys here that are intriguing. Smith could make it based on his special teams value. Stoops could make it based on the fact he could be like an Austin Trammell in the slot. And you have Tyler Johnson, who I think is a more complete receiver, and therefore I think he'll make the cut there. And that leaves them at 6, and our roster total is at 12. Moving on to tight end. Tyler Higbee is going to be on the physically unable to perform list, the PUP list, and so he doesn't have to be on the active roster. So I have them keeping 3 tight ends. I'm not overly high on Hunter Long coming off an injury, but there's not really a ton after that. So Colby Parkinson is your starter, Davis Allen is your second, Hunter Long is your third. Those are my tight ends. Could Nikola Kalanick or somebody like that make the roster? Absolutely. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened, but I'm going to go with those 3 for now, as Tyler Higbee is nursing that knee injury, trying to come back from that, rehabbing from that. So we'll see what ends up happening there. So that puts the roster math at 15. We move on to the offensive line. I have them keeping 10. I really like that number. I think it kind of gives them, a starting 5 and then a backup 5. Obviously, your starting 5, they'll all make it. Alec Jackson, left tackle, Jonah Jackson at left guard, center Steve Avila, right guard, Kevin Dotson, right tackle, Rob Havenstein. But after that, Joseph Noteboom, no-brainer, right? Took a pay cut to stay with the Rams. Still owed quite a bit of money this season, so he's obviously going to make the team as the 6th man that can play guard or tackle. Then you have Warren McClendon Jr., a 5th rounder from last year, who I'm very high on. Warren McClendon Jr. can play tackle. He can play guard, so he offers that positional flexibility there as the 7th guy. Then I think you're going to see the 2 draft picks, okay? I'm really high on Bo Limmer as the backup center. I think the Rams really made do with that. They got a guy that probably should have gone in the 4th or maybe even the 3rd round, but he ended up going, later on. So they ended up picking up Bo Limmer. I like the pickup. And then KT Leviston, who I've been very high on. I'm almost higher on him than I am on Bo Limmer. I think Leviston has a chance to be kind of that do-it-all guy. He could come in and play left tackle, right tackle, left guard, right guard. I mean, maybe he could even play center. I think what you see here with the first 9 guys I listed off are, you see positional flexibility. I mean, Bo Limmer could play 3 positions, any of the guard spots and center. KT Leviston, you could argue, could play all 5 positions. Joe Noteboom could play 4 out of the 5. And then you have Warren McClendon who could play 4 out of the 5. So you're feeling good about that. And then you got Logan Bruss as the 10th guy. That means AJ Arcuri does barely just miss the cut, as well as Zach Thomas and some other guys there. I don't think they're done with Logan Bruss, nor should they be. He was a 3rd round pick for a reason. The hope is that they can, find anything to take away from that pick and continue to develop. It's worth mentioning he got hurt in his rookie season. It's a little difficult to come back from that. So I have the Rams at 25 so far going into the defense. So you have 6 at the quarterback, running back. You have 6 wide receivers, 3 tight ends, and 10 offensive linemen, which gives you a total, of course, of 25. So we decided to go with the 10 offensive line. I could see them keeping 9 and maybe Bruss gets cut, but I still think they're going to keep Bruss. So I like 10. I don't see them going over 10 because you can put some of these guys in the practice squad. I don't think anybody's going to claim AJ Arcuri. So I think you could bring him back if you wanted to and so forth. So worth mentioning there. Defensive line, I have 6. And when I say defensive line, I'm talking interior defensive linemen. First off, we'll start off with Kobe Turner. Then we'll go to Bobby Brown III and Braden Fisk. I think those are your 3 starters. Day one, most likely you're going to see more of Kobe Turner and Bobby Brown III in just all around. I think Braden Fisk will be, kind of rotated in and out. Because they do have some guys in the back end there with, Desjuan Johnson, Tyler Davis, and Laryl Murchison, as well as Corey Durden, although I do have him missing the cut. So I have 6. I have Kobe Turner, I have Bobby Brown III, Braden Fisk, Desjuan Johnson, Tyler Davis, and Laryl Murchison. I would not be surprised if Braden Fisk ends up emerging as a superstar, to be honest with you. I would not be surprised. I also have to say, if you haven't seen my videos, Bobby Brown III is going to have a huge year this year, I think. And I think Kobe Turner is going to continue to do what he does. And I think Desjuan Johnson is going to take a step forward. And I think Tyler Davis is going to show up in the run game. And Laryl Murchison will be a solid rotational piece. So this is a good looking defensive line. I have them keeping 6 and cutting the UDFAs as well as Corey Durden. I think Durden could be back on the practice squad, offers that nose tackle depth. So they could definitely keep him around, and they probably will. So moving on, now we have 31. Moving on, we got 6 more at the edge position. You have Jared Verse, who is the first-round pick, 19th overall by the LA Rams. And Verse is somebody who they're bringing in thinking he can be the guy, okay? He can be the Robert Quinn to a Chris Long, okay? He could be a Von Miller to that Leonard Floyd. They want him to be the guy. It's why they drafted him in the first round. But you can't forget about Byron Young, who, yes, he's going to be 26 this year, but Byron Young is still very talented. He had a very good season last year, underrated, fell off a little bit down the stretch, but I think you see the potential there with Byron Young. I don't know how high his ceiling goes, but I will say this, if his ceiling isn't much higher, that's still a quality starter in the NFL, and you should be very excited about that. So Byron Young, of course, will be the starter next to Jared Verse. Then I have Michael Hoyt. Hoyt is going to be interesting. Do they look at him as a defensive lineman? Do they keep him at edge? I don't know. I put him at edge here. So that's the 3rd edge defender I'm keeping. Brennan Jackson, of course. 5th round pick out of Washington State. I love this pick. I keep saying it. Brennan is awesome. Obviously, we interviewed him, but you just talk about the work ethic. You talk about the nonstop motor and the nose for the football, how he just always seems to find the football. He scored multiple touchdowns in college. So Brennan Jackson, I think, has a chance to compete with Michael Hoyt for that 3rd spot. He's the 4th guy. 5th guy is O'Shawn Mathis, who could also compete for that 3rd spot. And Nick Hampton, who showed flashes down the stretch as maybe, somebody that could play a little bit off ball as well. He's the 6th edge defender that I have here. I do have them cutting Keir Thomas. I do like him. Could be back on the practice squad. We'll see what ends up happening. But those are the guys I have at edge. So now, moving on, we have linebacker here. This is inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker, whatever you want to call it. Ernest Jones, obviously, Christian Roseboom, and I have Jake Hummel. That does mean I have Spates, Reeder, and Fatukasi missing the cut. I do think all 3 could be brought back on the practice squad. But yeah, those are 3 linebackers I feel good about. Obviously would like to see them, address the linebacker maybe next year and wouldn't have minded it in the draft. But I think Ernest Jones predominantly being the guy and having them play so much in nickel, you don't need a ton of linebackers. In addition to that, you have guys like Cameron Curl and Quentin Lake that can play linebacker if needed. And so for that reason, I don't think you have to keep more than 3 linebackers, and that will probably be the roster math since that's been the roster math for them. So 3 linebackers there, and 5 cornerbacks we're going to go with. We're going to go with Darius Williams, obviously. He'll start. Across from him will be Tre'Davious White, and Kobe Durant will be the 3rd corner. After that, Darion Kendrick and Trey Tomlinson. Now, I could very well see Josh Wallace or Cam McCutcheon making this team, but in order for that to happen, the Rams would have to part with a guy that they spent draft capital on. And I don't think it'd be Kobe Durant, so I think it'd be between Darion Kendrick and Trey Tomlinson. And I think those two guys do completely different things. You know, of course, Darion Kendrick could play on the boundary. Trey Tomlinson is pretty much going to be a slot guy. Maybe he plays on the boundary a little bit, but he is smaller. So I just really don't see those two like clashing. I think they offer too many differences where the Rams would just have to decide that they don't want either. I don't see that happening, and so I have them keeping 5, and it's going to be all those 5. Now, keep an eye on number 44 behind me. Not going to wear 44, obviously, because Brennan Jackson's wearing 44. But Witherspoon, I really think, could be back with the Rams. I'm saying that now. Wouldn't be surprised if they move Trey White inside as like a nickel. Would not be surprised at all if they did that with Darius Williams. I would not be surprised at all if they brought back Ahkello Witherspoon late into this process. So now we move on to safeties. We're almost done here. So with the safeties here, you got Cameron Curl, obviously. You got Quentin Lake, who I mentioned. So I'm going to have them keeping 3 more here. I'm going to have them keeping Cameron Kinchens out of Miami, the 99th overall prospect in the draft. That was drafted, of course. Really love what he brings to the table. You know, kind of in my opinion, I think he's a diversified approach in the safety room because he's more of a ball hawk, whereas Cameron Curl's more of a hard-hitting safety, and Quentin Lake is kind of an well-rounded safety. And obviously Cam Curl is outstanding against the run. But Russ East has shown bits and pieces of that range. However, Cameron Kinchens had a lot of ball production in college, so I love going out and getting Kinchens. I like his just his overall range. I don't think it necessarily showed up on the testing athletically, but on tape it does. So I feel really good about him. Russ East, who I mentioned, will be the 4th. And then the 5th, this is the toughest decision I had to make on the roster because Jason Taylor II is a late pick last year who was hurt most of the year, who has really good athletic testing numbers, and he's somebody that can play special teams, has the range to play safety. I could see them keeping him. I could also see them keeping Tanner Ingle, who was a preseason standout last year, stuck around on the practice squad all year. He's somebody. And then Kenny Logan Jr., yes, of course, my Kansas bias maybe is coming out. But I'll say it absolutely is not, because if you watch Kenny Logan Jr., this is somebody who I think is going to be a pretty solid pro. And people wonder, where the hell he came from. Ever so often, it doesn't happen in the NBA because the NBA doesn't really like developing talent. Plus, they have really bad talent evaluators and just developers in general. NFL actually develops talent, okay? They go out and they find guys, late 7th. I was thinking NBA is the 2nd round. Late 7th, 6th round, even UDFA. And we've seen that before. Guys like Rodney McLeod, undrafted out of Virginia. The Rams turned him in to a quality starting safety. And I don't want to say the Rams turned him into that because they helped develop him, but it's also up to Rodney McLeod to play at that level, which he has his whole career. He's always been a solid starter, maybe even hovering above average, as that. So my thought process here when it comes to Kenny Logan Jr. as a UDFA is that I think we've seen plenty like him before. Good in college, rock solid, didn't test well, and they come to the NFL and their play speed is just as good as everyone else. I think Kenny Logan Jr. could be the option here. I'm going to say the Rams stick behind last year's draft class. I don't think they're willing to cut any of the 14, and I think they're going to keep Jason Taylor II on the roster, which means Kenny Logan Jr. just barely misses the cut. I think he'll be on the practice squad, has return ability as well, so that's something that could help him. But I do think the Rams are really high on the 14 guys that they got last year. I don't think they're willing to cut any of them, and Jason Taylor II is no different. So Moving on to the specialists, we have 3 to wrap it up. Joshua Carty as your kicker, punter Ethan Evans, and long snapper Alex Ward. The hope is that these 3 grow together, that they're signed to 5 to 6 to 7 year deals, and they're the new Johnny Hekker, Greg Zuerlein, Jake McQuaid. And I would not be surprised if that is what transpired. So that's the roster. Now, punt returner, kick returner, I got punt returner as Jordan Whittington, kick returner as Boston Scott. Wouldn't be surprised if they end up keeping Kenny Logan Jr. He could very well end up being one of those return spots, but that's what I see there. And then just for a roster bubble here to give you an idea, Ronnie Rivers, Xavier Smith, Drake Stoops, AJ Curry, Corey Durden, Olakunle Fatukasi, Troy Reeder, Omar Spates, Cam McCutcheon, Josh Wallace, Tanner Ingle, and Kenny Logan Jr. I think all those guys have a very good shot of making the team. I do think they'll fall short, but I wouldn't be surprised if any of them made it. So if you guys enjoyed this, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Check me out on all social media at JK Bogan, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, folks. Later. Do you love talking about the Rams, the NFL, or just want to be a part of a community? Join my free Discord server today. We're over 800 members. We got 24/7 live chat, a level 3 boosted server, the ability to call into JE Live, playing online games with us on Kick streams, toggleable alerts for when I go live on YouTube or Kick so you don't miss a live stream, and exclusive giveaways. Click the link in the description, the comments section, or the link that comes up in the video to learn more and join today.